good evening to everyone that's with us from whichever Rotaract club you are. I see Renee is there from Maraval Club. Thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts with you this evening on grants, which is a very important topic for Rotaractors because, of course, you're going to be involved in these pretty soon. So if you will, let me share my screen and let me begin. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, I could see the presentation.
All right, marvelous. Okay, so yes, so we're going to be talking about district grants, and as Michael indicated, I am our district grants chair. This is the third year in a row that I have done this, so hoping that somebody else might pick up the mantle next year. But I also have the pleasure of serving this year for the first time as our Assistant Regional Rotary Foundation chair for the zone, which includes our district 7020 and 77,000, which is Puerto Rico. So getting really involved in the Rotary Foundation at a different level this year, which is very exciting. A lot more work, but glad to have the opportunity to serve. So what I'm going to go through with you this evening, and I can of course email you these slides. So don't, if you want, Michael, just send me an email and I would be happy to email the slides. I'm going to go through some of the timelines that we as a district have set, criteria for eligibility, stewardship, reporting, the MOU and the application form. Now, some of this you may already know because we have already had a grants seminar with Rotaractors, but I felt it was important just to kind of recap in case there are gaps in your knowledge or you have questions, and of course I'm happy to answer those at the end of the session. So let's have a look at the timeline. From the 1st of July next year, Rotaract clubs will be allowed to either be international or host sponsors of global grants. And global grants, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment, they're not the focus of this presentation. I'm really talking about district grants. They are two distinct types of grants that you will have access to, but they're for much bigger projects and they require partners and a different level of engagement. However, effective 1st of July this year, Rotaract clubs were invited to apply for district grants. Now, the deadline for application is the 1st of November, which is literally in 4 days time. I have not received any applications from Rotaract clubs. So I'm assuming that we may not get any this year. It may just be a function of not being ready, not having the information. It was circulated, but it's fine. If you miss this year, then it gives you time to prepare and get your ducks in a row for next year. But we at the district set our own timelines for district grants. We set our own protocols, of course, with RI guidelines, and we use templates from other districts, but the district grants are very much managed, administered by our district leadership team, as opposed to global grants, which are done by the Rotary Foundation. Okay, so in order for you to apply for or be eligible for a district grant, and these are grants that are, the projects are valued less than 30,000 US. So anything above 30,000 US dollars is a global grant. That's how we sort of distinguish the two. It's important that you understand that there's certain criteria that you have to meet as a Rotaract club to be eligible. So you cannot even think of applying if you haven't met these criteria. So the first is, of course, you must not be in debit with any of your dues, whether it's to the district or to Rotary. And you must have contributed to the Rotary Foundation. This is mandatory for Rotary clubs as well. The district grant philosophy is that the more you put into the foundation, the more we get out to give back in grants. So it is a cycle. So the money that our clubs, Rotary and Rotaract clubs, put into the Rotary Foundation comes back to us in 3 years time. So every year when we're dispersing funds, we're actually dispersing based on giving from 3 years ago, and we get a portion of the total amount that was given that comes back to the district for us to give out in grants. So if clubs don't give to the foundation or they give very little, then we have only a little bit to disperse between all of the clubs that are applying for grants. And this year's grant allocation is quite small, unfortunately. So it really is, it's essential that you start to talk to your Rotaract clubs across the district about giving to the foundation. And of course, we will have various conversations and webinars about that, I am sure. It's also important that you pledge and give at least 100 US. This is the level we set for Rotaract clubs. I would love to see more than that. But when you're doing your planning for the next Rotary year, you must make sure, well, this year you need to give if you want to apply next year. And of course, I'm talking about Rotary years. And you should also have somebody attend the district grant seminar. These are held normally during our Petson conference, so that would be April time. But if there were enough Rotaractors who wanted a district grant seminar, I mean, you could even count this as attending one. Once it's facilitated by a Rotarian from the district, then it counts as a grant seminar. But it's important that you make a note that say we attended seminar facilitated by PDG Lara on this date. So this would count as one of your eligibility criteria. Now, you are required to provide financial statements, and this I know is a real challenge for a lot of Rotaract clubs. They do not have to be audited, but we should get at the very least an income and expenses statement. There are many Rotarians with financial expertise who can help you with this, probably in your own Rotary club. So reach out for support if this is not something you've done before. But we really do place a lot of emphasis on stewardship. And it's important that Rotaract clubs and Rotary clubs can show us how they spend their money and that we're confident that they have good protocols in place for financial stewardship. Your grant application must be aligned with one of the 7 areas of focus. Every Rotaract club must have a foundation chair. So if you don't have one already, think about appointing one, certainly for the next Rotary year. There is a memorandum of understanding, which I will talk a little bit about later on, but that has to be signed by both the sitting and incoming president, and it has to be sent to me by the end of June. So for the 2022-23 Rotary year, if your club intends to apply for a grant, you must make sure that your MOU is signed and submitted by the end of June. So really at the close of the Rotary year. Every project must have at least 2 Rotaractors identified as project leaders. And the reason that we ask for 2 is that if we can't reach one, then we can reach another. And of course, your budgeting and reporting all has to be done in US dollars because the grant funding is in US dollars. And because we have so many different currencies in our district, it's easier for us to manage if we deal with US dollars. So of course, you know, there are 7 areas of focus. As I mentioned, your project must be aligned to at least one. It can be multiple, at least one. And, you know, we're very excited about environment projects at the moment. We haven't had many because it's a new area of focus. I'm not saying that that sways our decision, but this year we had 2 of all the projects applications we got, we only had 2 that were in the environment. And so, you know, it's exciting if you have an environment project because this is a new area for us, but any of the areas of focus are valid. And if you're doing a global grant, this is essential. This is a mandatory thing. You have to be able to show how it aligns with one of the areas of focus, which of course, as you know, are aligned to the UN's SDGs. So we may disqualify a Rotaract club, as indeed we may a Rotary club, if we have reports of or suspect mismanagement of funds or misuse of grant funds. And this can be anything from just being negligent in terms of how you manage the money, how you report on the money, whether you have used the funds for personal gain. If we see a Rotaract member company, your employer, for instance, you know, being paid an invoice for a project, if there is any kind of overpricing. And one of the things that we do reserve the right to do is to ask Rotarians in the country that the Rotaract Club is in to actually do some checking. So if you submitted in an invoice or in your report that, I don't know, we paid $20,000 US for bags of ice in a Trinidad project, you know, obviously we're going to know that that's a bit suspicious. So, you know, we do want to make sure that you understand that stewardship is essential. We do use the 4-way test. We do trust. We do expect Rotaractors to honour the terms of the engagement, but also we have to be mindful of the fact that there may be some illegal or immoral or unethical activities around grants. So clubs can be suspended, disqualified. We can report you to your club. There will be an investigation. You could be disqualified from receiving grants for a period of time. We luckily haven't had to do this yet, but it is part of the condition of grant application. And as I mentioned, stewardship is essential. So one of the things, and again, I think it's probably a great opportunity because you have a bit of time to partner with your Rotary clubs and ask for some help with the financial side of this whole experience. You should have a financial management plan to show us how you intend to administer the grant funds. Okay, so this would include things like you've got to keep every single receipt. Even if you buy dinner mints, you have to keep a receipt. All right, everything has to be reported on. And if it's even as a global grant, it's even more strict in terms of the funding, because remember, you're getting money that Rotarians have given to the foundation. So it's important that we know it's being spent wisely. You should develop an inventory system if you're purchasing any assets. So if you're buying laptops or you're buying tablets as part of your project, we need to make sure that we have proper inventory for those sorts of things. And it goes without saying, of course, that you're not going to do anything illegal. Now, ideally, you need to set up a separate bank account for grant funds. But we do know that this is really tricky, especially in Trinidad. It's a nightmare to open a bank account. So if you can't, or it's just too much of a pain, or maybe you're only getting a small grant, maybe your grant's only 2,000 US. So it's really just not worth the hassle of opening a separate bank account. You should be able to show us in some way how you intend to keep the funds separate. And again, of course, with all your banking, you have to have your various protocols for signatories and so on. If you earn any interest on the funds, then those must be reported, that interest must be reported, and the district can then either approve that it be used back into the project or for another project that your club has. But you do need to report if you earn any interest. I mean, again, banks don't give us very much, but it's important to be totally transparent with how you manage the money that you're given. You're not supposed to invest the money, so you cannot put it in mutual funds or buy some bonds or stocks, right? Now, the district grants that you will apply for are short-term. No, I wouldn't say low impact, but they're short-term projects. So they should be projects that you can deliver within the Rotary year. Global grants are big long-term projects. Could be a 5-year project, a 10-year project. So with a district grant money, A, it's not going to be a huge amount, and B, because you should be able to spend it in the Rotary year, there's really not going to be much opportunity to invest it, but it's not allowed anyway. You should supply bank statements. So in your final report, at the end of the spend, you will submit to us a report with all of the money, how it's been spent, along with copies of the bank statements where you highlight the grant money in and out. And of course, if there is a change in signatories, we need to know what the plan is for changing. I know typically with Rotary every year, we have to add a couple, take a couple off. So it can be just a simple statement, but you've got to be mindful of that if the project funds cross over into another year, which they shouldn't really, but sometimes that does happen. So reporting is a key aspect of grant funds, the whole process. We do ask that we get a monthly report. We don't get them very often, if I'm honest, but we do ask for them. It could be photographs of the project. This is where we started and we've, planted a vegetable garden, or we've refurbished a computer lab, or whatever it is the project is. It could be just a simple report on money in, money out. And of course, you just keep us updated on the completion time. You also need to let us know if the project's going off the rails or off track somewhat. So just to give you an example, one of the clubs in Guyana that we gave a grant to last year, their project, for a number of different external reasons, couldn't be completed in the way they had hoped, but they did want to take the money and put it towards a similar but different project. And so they reached out to us, and we had the committee is myself, District Governor Sonia, and the Foundation Chair Milton, and we discussed it, and we felt that the project was still enough in line with what their original intention had been. Essentially, they had to move the project to a different location. So we agreed that the funds could be spent on project B instead of project A. So if something happens and you're not going to be able to spend the money the way you had hoped, you didn't get planning permission, something happened in the area, the community, whatever, it got flooded, you couldn't do the planting, then either you come up with a plan for how the money can be spent in a different way, or you're going to have to return the funds. Okay. And we can ask at any time what the money's being used for. So it's important that you have 2 or 3 people on this who are really good at administration. People who, and again, ask your Rotary Club maybe to help you if they have a couple of people who can provide support. But the reporting, it can be a simple Word document with a couple of photos and an income and expense statement, but it's important that we monitor the progress of your project. It may be a project that's completed in 1 month. So there's literally money in, project done, 1 report is the final report, and that's fine. Or it could be over a few months, in which case we do need to get these regular updates. So it's important to have proper record keeping systems, making sure that that includes copies of your club documents. I mean, you should have these anyway, all in the cloud, your club charter, all of those things. Make sure that you have your financial plan, of course. How do you store and archive documents and receipts and invoices? So one of the things that's very important for you to do is if you're using third-party vendors, so let's say you're buying laptops or you're buying gardening equipment for a particular community, make sure you get 3 quotes as much as you possibly can. Get 3 quotes for everything, except for minor items, like if you're, buying drinks for the opening party or whatever. But once you're spending above, I don't know, above 1,000, certainly 500 US, above 300-400 US, you should really get 3 quotes. If you can't get 3 quotes because there's only 1 provider of that particular thing on the island, then just make a note of that. And also, of course, if one of your quotes includes a Rotary owned or a Rotaract owned or employee business, you need to declare that. You need to let us know, listen, the only company on the island that provides this particular type of computer software is owned by a Rotarian. Then we need to know that. It's not that we won't give you the money, but it's important to be very transparent. So the MOU, and again, you'd all been sent this, some of you would have signed it. So just to quickly recap, the Memorandum of Understanding is really just a confirmation that your Rotaract Club understands the terms and conditions that the district has laid out and agrees to abide by them. So by signing the MOU, you are agreeing to comply with all of the terms and conditions that we've laid out. So the MOU looks a bit like this. Some of you may have seen it. It is to be signed by the Rotaract current president as well as the president-elect. Sometimes that's the same person, in which case they sign both sections. But it is important that we have the incoming president sign, because if the project goes into another Rotary year for whatever reason, delays, planning errors and so on, it's important that the incoming president also agrees that when they take office, they will comply with the terms and conditions. That's why it's done this way. So even though most 99% of the projects are executed within 1 Rotary year, if there is that sort of creep into a next Rotary year, we want to make sure the incoming leadership is also signed on. So the terms are pretty much what I've already gone through with you, that you have to submit copies of your receipts, that the approved expenditure must equal the amount that you got. So if you've applied for $1,000, you must spend $1,000. Now you can spend more from other sources, of course, your sponsors and fundraising and so on. But if we give you $1,000, we expect you to spend $1,000. If you don't spend it, you have to reimburse the difference. Okay, I'm sure you would have no problem spending $1,000 US, but just to let you know, it is important that we give the money with the intention that it be spent. All right, make sure that if you don't comply, you understand that if you don't comply with the terms of the MOU, you may have to refund the full amount, even if you've already spent some of it. So if we find out that there's any impropriety, or you saw the list of different things that could cause you to be disqualified, we may say, okay, listen, A, we're cancelling the project, B, you've got to return the $1,000 or the $5,000, whatever it is you got. And at the end of the project, you must submit your final report within a month of completion. So that could trickle into a new Rotary year, but certainly within 30 days of the end of the project, all the money spent, we expect to get a final report with all of the, ideally photographs, but certainly receipts, etc. Okay. So let's have a look at the application form for a grant. These are submitted by email, and they are submitted to the district grants chair, which is me at the moment, and copied to the foundation chair and the governor. I mean, you can just send it to me and I, of course, will forward it to them. Our assessment is done very quickly. We have a deadline, and normally within a couple of weeks of the deadline, we have met to go through the applications. We do look at what clubs have given to the foundation. That's the first thing we look at. So if your club has not given to the foundation, you're automatically disqualified. Thereafter, we look and say, okay, what other criteria have they met? We go through, we may ask for a copy of your financial management plan. We may ask for financial statements. It all depends. And with Rotaract, I think because it's the first time we're doing this, we're probably going to be a little bit more stringent to make sure that you meet the financial stewardship requirements. And we will then advise you of the decision. It took a little bit longer this year because I was traveling and at the beginning of October, but we have just this week advised the clubs of our decision. And then what we have to do is we then basically summarize the funds that we want, and we submit a form to the Rotary Foundation, we being the district. So let's say we decided that we would like to give 10 clubs grants, and each grant was for $1,000. I will then complete an application to the Rotary Foundation that they release to us $10,000 US of our DDF. And when we get that money, we then disperse it to the Rotary and Rotaract clubs. It's fairly quick. We are having some challenges at the minute accessing the online reporting. I'm not sure what's going on at RI, but normally, so the applications close September for Rotary, decisions are made in October. Probably the money would come, hopefully it normally comes in by December. So with all things being equal, if you apply in the first half of the Rotary year, you can expect to have the money available for the second half of the Rotary year. Just in a nutshell, that's sort of broad terms. Sometimes it's quicker, but sometimes we do have some, like we're having now, some application challenges. So this is what the application form looks like. Of course, your project name, and it's very helpful to give it a catchy title. So, you know, just because it helps us remember. So we had, you know, we've had things like, you know, rubbing 2 cents together project, environmental, entrepreneurship, you know, girls coding, girls go global. I mean, just come up with a catchy title, because it just helps me, because if all of my projects are called, you know, empowering women through entrepreneurship, they all kind of blur into one. So come up with a catchy title. I know Rotaractors are super creative. And of course the Rotaract club name. Now you can partner, you could be multiple Rotaract clubs partnering on an application, that's fine too, but there should really be one lead club with 2 lead coordinators. All right, we don't have the time to communicate with 15 Rotaract clubs. So you must have measurable outcomes. The project should in some way be able to demonstrate sustainability. It's not as essential for a district grant as it is for a global grant, but we do like to see that you've put some thought into how, when Rotary leaves or Rotaract leaves, how the community can carry on the project. So maybe there's a training component as part of your project. So one of the lovely projects that we had once was beekeeping, and actually installing some hives in a particular community. And part of the project was then to train residents of the community to be beekeepers. And then of course to sell their honey and various other byproducts. So in that way, it shows us that this is an investment in the community. So we're kind of giving seed money in a sense to help them become their own employers or entrepreneurs. Of course, you must identify the areas of focus. And you should be able to tell us a little bit about the community that you're serving. So both the demographics and the geographics. So, okay, it's a community in Boissier and Maraval. Tell us a little bit about it. Is it mostly single mothers? Is it a fairly economically deprived community? Is it a community that has lots of elderly citizens? You know, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a lot of detail, but it's important for us to understand why you want to help that particular community as opposed to any other. You should also be able to identify how many people will benefit. So is it going to be 100 families? Is it going to be one school that has 30,000 children? You know, give us a little bit of detail about the sort of scope of the project. So yes, you might be putting some laptops into a computer lab in a primary school, but it's actually going to impact, you know, 1,000 children a year over 5 years. Of course, children coming in and out. So, or there's 5 classes 5 levels, and each level is 200 kids. And so show us a little bit about how the community is going to benefit and who they are, so we can sort of put a face to the project. Start date and end date is crucial, ideally within the same Rotary year as I mentioned. So your sustainability is going to be requested. We are going to ask you to talk a bit about that. So skills and knowledge transfer is an easy one. Are you training people? Are you bringing in a trainer? But also expendable supplies. So if part of your project, let's say, for example, you're providing a printer to a primary school to support their administration. What happens when ink cartridges run out, when the paper runs out? How is the school going to be able to fund that once Rotary and Rotaract leave? So it's important to think about some of the supplies are literally going to be one and done. As much as possible, think about what will the community do when we've gone? How will they be able to sustain this project? Now, it may be a project that doesn't actually require a lot of, maybe you're doing something in a playground and really all the community has to do is cut the grass. So that's fine. There's no real expendable supplies. But if there are, then we need to be able to talk about them. So maintenance, of course, if it's something like a playground, a park, something of that nature. How is the community? Maybe you're buying them tools for maintenance as part of the project. And after that, they have to, buy their own or rent them out to make money. Partnering is an essential thing for Rotary now. It's really become more and more frontline for us in terms of our Rotary projects. So this could be anybody from the UN, from Red Cross, it could be a corporate partner, it could be a government ministry, it could be, Ministry of Youth. So it'd be great if you can show us that there are other partners. And of course, share with us who they are. And make sure you let us know all the Rotaract clubs who are involved, and also if there's Rotary clubs and Interact clubs or Early Act clubs. Let us know who's involved in the project. And really what we like to see is, get some partners in there. Maybe you're partnering with a media house, Guardian Media, to get some great PR coverage for the project, or, you've partnered with Blue Waters to provide water for the project, the workers on the project or something. It could be a very small partnership, but it's important that we see that you've reached out and it's not just your club by yourselves trying to do something when there's other people who can help you. So you should indicate the number of Rotaractors. So remember, not every Rotaractor is necessarily going to work on the project, but maybe there's some helping with the fundraising, some are doing the graphic design, some of them are doing the social media component of your project. So each of you may have a slightly different role. Important to let us know that. And then your budget is essential. You don't have to fill in every line. You may just literally need $2,000 for equipment. I don't recommend, as much as possible, paying for labor. Now, there are exceptions, of course, if you're paying a specialist to do something. So maybe part of your project is bringing in, so I don't know, maybe you're doing training on teachers dealing with children with autism, and you'd like to hire a specialist who teaches teachers about dealing with children with special needs, and they've asked for a consultancy fee. You could put that in there with a note attached, but we don't, of course, really usually like to pay people for their time. As you know, we do this all for love. So supplies, equipment, etc. is fine. And you can always provide us with a more detailed budget as an attachment. So this is just for our records, but maybe there's a bit more information you'd like to share with us. And of course, your budget could be $50,000, but you're applying for $10,000. Remember, you have a limit of $30,000 for a district grant. So you could ask us for more, but district grants have to be under $30,000. So very often we will see project applications that are for 30, 40,000, and they're asking the district for 10 because they intend to source the rest of the money from some of their corporate sponsors, or they've applied to the Commonwealth Foundation, or they've got another grant from somewhere else. They're doing fundraising, selling tickets and so on. So think about the total cost. And as I say, I expect Rotaract projects to be probably more on the sort of conservative side, but there's nothing wrong with having a big project in mind. Just remember, we can only give you up to a certain dollar value, and it is going to be influenced by the amount your club has given to the foundation. Okay. So then you have the signatories. This is at the end of the application. And this is where we get the contact information. So the president, and then we want contact information of the 2 project coordinators. Could be the president, that's fine. Ideally, I would suggest you actually appoint a separate little committee to manage this. It's important to have your foundation chair involved, but we do need email addresses and phone numbers and so on so that we can keep it in touch and find out how the project's going. And then just a quick thought on global grants. They are, as I mentioned, for projects over 30,000. It's important to be clear. You do need to have an international partner. So this could be a Rotaract club in New York. It could be a Rotaract club in London. Doesn't matter where, but an international partner is essential. And as I mentioned, global grants are approved by Rotary Foundation. The district grant can help you, the district grants team can help you with the application. We can help you if you're looking for partners. We have some great people in the zone. Sandra Hempstead comes to mind out of Florida. She has a lot of experience with global grants. So if you said, look, we'd like to do a global grant for $50,000 over 5 years to do X project, we need a partner, you know, let me know. And I would be happy to talk to Sandra. We might be able to find you a partner in the US or Canada or Australia, but it is a requirement for a global grant because that's the nature of the project, of course, that it's global, even though it's being done locally. And you can also be the international partner for a Rotaract club in another country. Now, remember, one of the nice things about our district is that our international partner could actually be within our district because we have so many countries. So you could partner with a Rotaract club in Barbados or Martinique or Guyana, Suriname, to do a global grant. It's not against the rules, but it's not really ideal because really you want to partner with clubs who can access a bit more money than we can. But it is an option if that's something you'd like to think about doing. So the key to getting a grant is giving to the foundation. That is my last thought to you. You clubs really need to start thinking about how you're going to give to the foundation. Maybe have a fundraiser, start to ask members to give $5 a month, put it in a kitty and then make the donation at the end of the year. You know, think about what's realistic for your club. We don't expect to see, well, we would love to, but we don't expect to see thousands and thousands of dollars from Rotaract, but there should be something. You should be moving the needle. So maybe say, okay, you know what, we're going to give 500 US this year. So that is what, roughly 4,000 TT. So break it down. If you've got 7-8 months left in the year, you've got 10 members. What could we each give a little bit every month? Or we're responsible for raising that. We have a fundraiser, we have a Christmas party, or, you know, virtual bingo, or whatever it is you want to do. But you will not be considered eligible if you haven't given. So it's important to get on that foundation train now. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. Let me come out of this and I will be happy to take any questions. Okay, specifics. Oh, Justin, hey. Okay, specifics for nominating a foundation chair, Colleen. I wouldn't say there are any, but that person does have to do their homework and read up about the foundation, right? Of course, they should really do as much reading as they can, go to webinars. I mean, there's a ton of stuff on the Rotary Learning Center. This person should really become your sort of go-to person on the foundation. But essentially, it's to have somebody in your club who we can liaise with, who we will invite to, you know, webinars and sessions. So at this point, it's just good to have somebody appointed, but their job is going to be to learn about the foundation, to promote. Next month is Rotary Foundation month. They're going to have to promote End Polio. You know, they have to obviously promote Rotary Foundation issues. Tomorrow we have a webinar with the Rotary Foundation trustee Aziz Memon from Pakistan. My club's going to be presenting a Paul Harris to the CMO, Dr. Parasram. So those sorts of events, which typically are Rotary only, even though of course we always invite Rotaractors, your Rotaract chair needs to get on the mailing list, make sure you're sharing that information with your Rotaractors and so on. So could be a senior member, it could be a past president, it could just be somebody who's super interested in the foundation. I mean, you should all be really, but certainly important to get somebody who wants to learn and wants to be involved. I saw a question. Okay, Justin, the deadline. Yeah, the deadline for Rotaract clubs is 1st of November. So, and we did share that with all the clubs. I know for a fact it was emailed out, but it actually only just occurred to me as we were going through the Rotary applications 2 weeks ago that we hadn't received any from Rotaract. But yes, your deadline. So you still have a couple days. You can send them to me, but remember, you must have given to the foundation, your club. Some of your clubs have. Some of your clubs are off to a great start. So make sure, and I mean, you know, you can always give me a call if you have any questions. Tell me.
So yeah, I was just wondering if you have to submit the application by November 1st for a project in the next Rotary year?
No, that's for this year. That's for this Rotary year. So if you want to get a grant for this Rotary year, and as I mentioned, the applications are going in, so you probably won't get the money until December, if I'm honest, because we are having some delays at RI. So if you apply for it now, you can hope to spend it January to June next year.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Small application, you know, 500 US or 1,000 US. Yeah, it is quick, Renee. But remember, that's why we've asked clubs weeks ago to apply, right? Because I do also have a job. My whole life is not just spent waiting for people to apply for grants, right? So, you know, we do set deadlines and we stick to them because, you know, we have to have a process on this thing. So if you guys want to apply, you still have a couple of days. Don't feel pressure if you don't want to because you're not ready. That's fine. We can do more training. We can get you ready for next July. But there is still a window if you wanted even just to apply for a small amount, but make sure you've given to the foundation, either last year or in this current Rotary year.
Laura, just want to say great presentation.
Thank you.
My question was similar to Justin's own, but you kind of answered it. And I just wanted to know because we have we're in the process of planning a project to be executed in January. So just wanted to know if we applied, no, if we'd have the funding for January, and you pretty much answered it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I would like to say, you know, is it the truth? In the past, we have always been able to get the money to clubs by just November, December.
Right.
But this year there is a problem. Something's happened with I don't know, PDG Lala's trying to sort it out. But based on past experience, yes, you should get the money. Maybe I'm hoping early December, and then you'll have it in your account. Now, the other problem we have, of course, so we get it in the district account, and then we have to transfer it to your bank account.
Right.
And we all know how that happens in the Caribbean. So the money might very well be in the district, but it might take another 2 weeks to get to your account in Trinidad or wherever you are. And so ideally what I would suggest is maybe even think about opening a US account if you can, if you have a little bit of US. But either way, it doesn't matter. But once you apply, make sure you've got all your banking information, right? Your SWIFT code, your ABA code, all of those things. So if you are awarded a grant, we can issue the payment easily.
Understood. And do we include that in the application one time?
No, you don't approve it.
Okay.
It's not in the application because, of course, not everybody gets approved. But we had real horrors with that last year because the district account was in St. Kitts. And then, of course, that was with, I want to say, Scotia. And then transferring money from Scotia in St. Kitts to RBC in Maraval was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
And in US dollars. So, yeah. So that can often be the delayer. The money's here in the region, but it could take 2 weeks to get actually physically in your account. But we'll work around that when we come to it.
All right. Thank you for that.
My pleasure, love. Thanks for asking. Fewer clubs without bank accounts. Renee, not going to happen. They have to open a bank account. So if they don't have one now, start preparing to open one before next July. Sorry, we have to transfer money to bank accounts. I'm not going to give you a check that you then put in your grandmother's UTC account or your neighbor's gardener's boyfriend's bank account. It has to be a Rotaract Club bank account with the name of the Rotaract Club on it. Ideally 4 signatories, any 2 of which can sign, that kind of thing, right? You guys have to have proper financial protocols in place. And as I said, ask Rotarians to help, right? We have Rotarians in all the banks, as far as I know. So if you're having problems, reach out to your Rotary Club and let's see if they can help you. But yeah, bank account mandatory. My pleasure, Renee. Thanks for all the great questions. Spread the news far and wide. And if you have other Rotaract clubs who'd like me to do the presentation again, I'm happy to do it. I mean, can't do it in French, unfortunately, but you know, Michael, maybe you guys should let the other Rotaract clubs know. If we miss the 1st of November deadline, that's not a huge deal, but let's at least make sure that Rotaract clubs are really ready for next year. So I can do this presentation, you know, a dozen more times if you need me to, but I mean, it's a shame there's only 14 people here, because I really think that more Rotaract clubs in the district need to know about this. So Justin, you're hooked up to all the Rotaract clubs. Renee, you guys talk to, yes, I can speak at your conference. Absolutely, Kareem. But I think this is an important topic because there's money out there that you guys can access. You just got to make sure you've got all the right protocols and procedures in place, and we will help you as much as we can. So my pleasure, guys. Thank you for the interest, and you know, please remember to give to the foundation, and yeah, I look forward to working with you and supporting your grant applications.